Revealed, 7 sinister cyber crimes that haunt the dark web. Discover the terrifying truth. The sunlight dipped low over Madison Heights, the neighborhood painted with the warm hues of golden hour. For Sarah Thompson, 34, life was supposed to be ordinary, the laughter of children, the aroma of barbecues wafting through the air, and the welcoming chatter of friendly neighbors. But all it took was one evening for everything to unravel, sending a chill down her spine that would haunt her forever. After a grueling shift at the marketing firm, her tired eyes met a horrifying sight, shattered glass glittering like broken dreams on her porch. Heart racing, she rushed inside, praying for the kids, Max and Lily. Inside, the warmth of home morphed into a terrifying silence. The computer screen flickered violently, a sinister message glowing like a beacon of dread, "I see you." Panic engulfed her. Surely this was some twisted prank, she thought, but the unsettling sensation that crawled over her skin told her otherwise. Over the next few days, dread crept into her once peaceful routine. Strange cars began lingering outside, engines idling, occupants hidden behind tinted windows. The local dogs vanished one by one, and whispers of a predator lurking in plain sight snaked into her mind. Yet, she had to wear a brave face for Max and Lily, to shield them from the dark clouds gathering above their heads. Each day was a delicate dance, straddling the line between normalcy and terror. Desperate, she confided in Jim, her neighbor, a tech-savvy guy who always lent a hand with her devices. "Just tighten your online security," he assured her, scratching his chin, but something felt off. She couldn't shake the feeling that Jim was hiding something, especially as more strange things erupted around her. Call it a mother's intuition. As she surfed the internet one night, a wave of nausea washed over her after linking Jim to a series of cyber crimes targeting suburban families. She reached out to local authorities, but her calls for help were met with a laissez-faire shrug. The cops dismissed her concerns as hysteria. Was she losing her grip? Or maybe the idyllic facade of Madison Heights was hiding darker truths? Sarah's mind raced faster than her heart, but her thoughts always circled back to her children. She imagined the click of a door, the shadow looming in the darkness, reaching for them. Just as she was spiraling deeper into her investigation, Sarah confronted Jim one murky evening. The tension crackled in the air like static, thick and unease-laden. His expression was almost predatory, that cold glint in his eye sending shivers through her core. "You shouldn't have looked for me," he said, lips curling into a smile that twisted her gut. Then, just as quickly, her phone buzzed, a chilling notification lighting up the screen. "You shouldn't have looked for me." As the lights flickered, the room around her dissolved into shadow. Sarah's breath caught in her throat when the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed outside, dragging her back to the present reality where safety had become a distant memory. Is he really the monster she thought he was? And what of the unknown terror that lurked in the periphery of her vision? As she clutched her children, the stakes felt higher than ever. What would it take to protect the last remnants of her ordinary life? The sound of footsteps grew louder, sending icy tendrils of fear spiraling down Sarah's spine. She held her breath, heart pounding against her ribcage like a drum warning of impending doom. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting into dark shapes that flickered and vanished as if the darkness itself had come alive. She could feel sweat trickle down her back, but it was not the heat that caused the chill, it was the dread that something terrible was lurking just outside. Max and Lily were silent, sensing their mother's unease. Their small bodies huddled against her side, trusting yet unaware of the danger that wrapped around them like a suffocating shroud. Sarah instinctively pulled them closer, shielding them from the growing malevolence that permeated the air. Then, a sharp knock shattered the silence. Sarah jumped, her breath catching as fear turned to terror. The sound echoed through the house, making it feel impossibly small, like the walls were closing in. "Mommy?" Max whispered, his voice trembling. Sarah had to stay calm. She had to protect them. "It's probably just the wind," she replied, forcing an unwavering tone. But even she didn't believe her own words. Peering cautiously through the window's sheer curtain, she saw a familiar face twisted in the shadows. It was Jim, standing by his car, his eyes locked onto her with an intensity that made her stomach churn. "Help!" he called, but the way he said it felt wrong, like a predator luring its prey. "Stay here," she instructed Max and Lily, not bothering to mask the urgency in her tone. As she inched toward the door, another knock resounded harder this time. "Sarah. I need your help. Please." Jim's voice sliced through the night air, filled with an eerie desperation that set her on edge. Her instincts screamed for her to retreat, to lock the door and hide, but the deceitful tug of complicity urged her closer. Just as she reached for the doorknob, her phone buzzed violently against the table. Her skin prickled as she glanced at the screen, which showed a video call from an unknown number. Before she could process what was happening, curiosity pulled her hand. She tapped the screen, and an unexpected face appeared, a man with hollow eyes and a devilish grin. "Hello, Sarah," the man said, his voice a silk shroud hiding a venomous threat. "You've been looking for answers." Bad choice. Her breath quickened, terror clawing at her neck. She instinctively shut the phone, but the suffocating grip of dread tightened around her heart. She turned back to the door, where Jim was still standing, but now there was something off in his expression. It flickered between concern and something darker. The world outside seemed to dim, shadows converging in the corners of her vision. "Sarah!" Jim shouted again, the underlying menace starting to seep through his facade. As her instincts screamed for action, she stepped back, her heart racing as she grabbed the kids' hands. They had to leave, to escape this growing nightmare. But just as she turned, the power flickered and died, enveloping them in pitch darkness. "Mommy, I'm scared," whispered Lily, clutching Sarah's arm tightly. "We'll be okay, sweetie," she reassured, though her voice trembled. A surge of courage fueled her against the rising tide of panic. "Just follow me." They stumbled through the darkened house, guided only by the soft glow of Sarah's phone, now a beacon of safety. But as they reached the door, her instinct screamed again, because outside, behind Jim, something was moving in the shadows. Chills crept down her spine. It wasn't just Jim. There were others, lurking, waiting. "Sarah," Jim's voice slipped into a warning. "You shouldn't have looked for me." The air thickened with tension, alive with unspeakable terror. Sarah knew she needed a plan, a way to turn this around before it consumed her. But what other horrors lay hidden in Madison Heights? What did the darkness really want from her? The night had only just begun. The phone's glow flickered, casting eerie shadows against the walls that danced like twisted marionettes. Sarah's heart raced, matching the frantic beats in the hollow silence. Max and Lily squeezed her hands tighter, their small fingers trembling with fear, and she clutched them back, reminding herself they were the only source of light in this terrifying abyss. "Stay close," she whispered, barely above a breath. Each hesitant step towards the door felt like wading through thick fog, the darkness a tangible weight pressing against her. She could hear the faint rustle of leaves, the wind howling a sinister tune as if nature itself conspired to block their escape. Lily whimpered softly, her innocent voice cutting through the night. "Where do we go, Mommy?" Just outside. I have to get a better look." With her pulse pounding in her ears, Sarah edged toward the door, pushing it open just a fraction. The night air, cool and oppressive, rushed in, holding a rancid stench that twisted her stomach. Jim's silhouette was clearer now, but his features seemed even more distorted, almost animalistic in the poor light. "Get away from him!" Sarah shouted, her voice wavering. She couldn't tell whether she was yelling at Jim, or the creeping horrors lurking within the shadows behind him. She could feel the kids stir restlessly beside her, the fear escalating in the tight space of their little huddle. "Sarah, please." Jim's voice cracked with a layer of desperation that twisted into something darker. "It's not safe. They're here." And with that, something slithered from the darkness, a dark shape coiling around him. The moonlight caught a glimpse of twisted limbs and gnarled hands that seemed to stretch endlessly toward Sarah and her children. The visage of Jim morphed into a scream, his mouth ajar in utter terror. "Run!" Sarah screamed, panic gripping her entirely. The command ignited something primal within her. She pulled her children with her and dashed into the hallway, the dim light of her phone barely pushing back the encroaching night. "Mommy!" Max cried, his voice fragile, but Sarah could barely respond. The air pulsed around them, heavy with dread, and Sarah's mind raced with thoughts of escape, legs pumping like pistons, driven by sheer survival. They raced through the house, heartbeats thundering with every step. But as they reached the back door, Sarah stumbled, almost losing her grip on Max's hand. Was that a whisper? Someone saying her name? Goosebumps rolled across her arms as the darkness closed in around them. "No!" she shouted, shaking her head fiercely, almost believing it could actually keep the shadows at bay. Determination surged through her, and she shoved open the back door, bright moonlight flooding in. A sharp gasp escaped her lips as they stepped outside. The yard seemed untouched, an unsettling calm draping everything like a thin veil. But then they turned, and horror seized her once more as she saw a figure in the distance, more than one. Dark silhouettes lurching like specters from a nightmare, their movement jerky and unnatural. "Mommy, please!" Lily's cry broke her heart, the sheer terror of it grating against her nerves. "No!" Sarah pushed her voice through the taut silence. "We have to go." Gripping the kids by the arms, they tore past the porch and into the forgotten overgrown path leading toward the woods. "Where are we going?" Max's voice trembled. "Anywhere but here." But as they plunged deeper into the trees, the forest came alive with sinister whispers. The branches seemed to reach out like fingers. Shadows twisted and curled around them, closing in from all sides, as if the very woods conspired against them. The chilling air wrapped around Sarah's throat, and she could hear them, voices, 100 voices, all calling to her, beckoning her for something she could not understand. Sarah, that voice again, a familiar tone laced with malice. She spun around, desperately scanning the darkness. And in the distance, there was a glimpse of Jim, a cruel grin stretching across his face, surrounded by those shadows that had come for them. "Run!" she screamed, just as the darkness surged forward, hungry. What awaited them deeper in the woods? Would they survive the relentless pursuit of shadows? Unseen horrors were closing in, and Sarah was about to learn just how far the darkness would go to claim its prey. The trees loomed overhead, their gnarled branches reaching outward like skeletal fingers. The whispers grew louder, curling around Sarah's thoughts, wrapping around her mind like a vice. She looked behind, and for a heart-stopping moment, the sight of those wronged figures, with their gaping mouths and pained expressions, made her stagger. "Keep moving," she hissed, yanking on Lily's arm. Max stayed close, his breath quickening with every labored beat of his heart. They ducked beneath blackened branches, the snapping twigs sounding like bones breaking. The path twisted deeper, rising and falling like a dark undercurrent. Sarah could feel the weight of the night pressing down, and all she wanted was to break free from its suffocating grip. "Mommy," Max's voice trembled like a twig in the wind. "What are those things?" "I don't know," she snapped, fear slicing through her. Guilt gnawed at her, she needed to reassure them, but the truth was too terrifying. It clawed at her throat, desperate to escape. Instead, she forced herself to focus on the path ahead, knowing they were being hunted. Suddenly, a guttural growl echoed through the underbrush, primal and raw. Sarah's heart dropped. She turned her head, catching a glimpse of something dark and massive, shifting among the shadows. It paused, as if sensing them. The growl morphed into an eerie chant, and part of her screamed to turn back. "Run!" she urged, her voice raw with desperation. They plunged forward, blackness swirling around them, consuming bits of hope they had left. Their laughter of innocence was buried with the wind, stolen by whatever darkness trailed just beyond sight. but the ground beneath them heaved, roots and dirt shifting like angry serpents. Sarah felt herself begin to stumble, and her instincts screamed for her to right herself. She gripped her children tightly, feeling the warmth of their skin against the coldness of the night. They were all that mattered. The pulse of being a mother surged within her, mingling with fear, pushing her to keep moving, to keep fighting. "Mommy, help!" Lily cried, her small body slipping, but Sarah recovered her with a swift yank. She could hear it now, a chorus of hisses building, driving into her bones. She could barely see where they were going, the shadows closing in, pulling them deeper into what felt like an endless nightmare. "No!" Another growl split the air, frantic, closer. It was a warning, and it filled her with dread. The air trembled, vibrating with something far more ominous than fear. It was anticipation, and it was hungry. Panic surged like a high tide. They rounded a tree thick enough to hide them from the unseen, and for a brief moment, they paused, heavy breaths mingling and echoing in the heavy silence. "We can't stop. We need to keep going," Sarah urged, shaking with adrenaline and a flicker of anguish that threatened to consume her. But when she moved forward, the landscape shifted dramatically. The trees twisted grotesquely, forming a corridor that felt almost alive. The shadows merged behind her, whirling into shape, but they were still blanketed in darkness, shrouded from view. "Mommy," Max started, but the words hung in the air like a death knell, lost in that malevolent whispering. "Into the clearing," she commanded, leading an unsteady path. They emerged into an open space, the moonlight bathing everything in an ethereal glow. But unease coiled tightly in her stomach, and it scattered across her skin like ice. For there in the center of the clearing stood a figure, clad in darkness, the crooked smile hauntingly familiar. "Mommy, do you see him?" whispered Max, his voice trembling as it broke the spell of silence. She nodded but felt a wave of nausea rise in her throat. It was Jim, but he looked different, more twisted, somehow more alive and more dead than a living man should be. Shadows danced around him, merging into a grotesque mass. "The forest is hungry," he hissed. "And it's chosen you." A tumult of fear and despair surged through Sarah. They had to run again. But as they turned, the trees moved, closing off their path, trapping them like prey within a predator's jaws. Panic tightened around her heart. They were not just running from shadows anymore. She felt a wave of darkness sweep through her as terror settled and rushed, and hit like a tidal wave. What was waiting for them now? Would there be no escape from the sinister forest grasping for their very souls? As she faced the dark figure looming ahead, the choices before them unraveled like a fraying rope, slipping further away from salvation. The shadows shifted, pulsating as grotesque shapes wedged between branches and bramble. Sarah's heart thudded, battling a rising tide of dread. She dared a glance at Jim, that twisted face holding a terrible promise. Was he a ghost or something worse? The forest had awakened, its hunger palpable like a breath on the back of her neck. "Mommy, what's wrong with him?" Max's voice trembled, clinging to her like a frightened creature. Every instinct screamed at her to shield him, to protect him from this darkness. "Run!" she cried out, her voice cracking under the weight of desperation. The words reverberated against the trees like an incantation, an invocation of the sinister. As they turned, the ground trembled, roots creeping upward like fingers, trying to snatch at their heels. Her mind raced. Where to go? The path behind them was swallowed in shadows, and ahead, the clearing morphed into a cruel maze. Sarah felt the boundaries of sanity fray. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum in the suffocating silence, intensifying the dread. "Mommy!" Lily shrieked as one of the roots lunged out, tangling around her ankle. Sarah spun, grabbing her daughter's hand just in time. The roots writhed like serpents eager to claim them, dragging through the earth with a malevolent hunger. She could hear the whispers again, louder now, curling and twisting around her, voices from beyond the grave begging, warning. It was a song of despair. "Leave her. Run." she shouted, fear propelling her into motion. They pushed forward, limbs flailing, breath coming in ragged gasps. The forest seemed alive, weaving a snare of darkness around them. Sarah could see the faces of those lost figures from before flit through the shadows, eyes wide with terror, mouths moving in eternal silent screams. Each glimpse pulled her deeper into an abyss of panic, and she fought against the urge to look back. "Where do we go?" Max cried, his voice mingling with the rustle of leaves, as if the trees themselves were whispering answers. "Just follow me." She felt the urgency of her own words, but uncertainty gripped her tighter than fear. They rushed left, and then right, the terrain shifting conspiratorially beneath them. Beneath her frantic steps, the very ground rippled, threatening to swallow them whole. Behind, the guttural growl rose again, a rogue wave of sound that sent ice cascading down her spine. The darkness churned, revealing the outlines of shadowy figures emerging from the gloom, their hollow eyes fixed on Sarah and her children. "Open your eyes," the figures seemed to chant, their voices merging with the howls of wind, reverberating against her skull. "Run faster!" she barked, every fiber of her being screaming to escape the malevolence clawing at them. She pulled Lily closer, that fragile warmth giving her strength, urging her feet to move quicker, harder. They veered left again and stumbled into a small thicket, a bizarre anomaly where the shadows held their breath. It felt eerily quieter, but something lurked just beyond the edges of their vision. The trees leaned closer, almost eavesdropping a conspiratorial audience. "Here. We can hide," Sarah whispered, tucking them behind an ancient oak that felt gnarled and alive. A moment of respite, a moment to gather themselves, to breathe. And yet, the air pulsed with an ominous charge. "Mommy, are they gone?" Max's voice broke the uneasy silence. "I don't know," she murmured, her heart drumming like a war cry in her chest, the dread coiling tighter around her throat. The whispers returned, brushing against her ears, teasing her thoughts. "They're hungry." Suddenly, there was a shift, a rustling too close for comfort. Time slowed, transforming each heartbeat into a drumroll of doom. Something was coming. Something dreadful. What awaited them in the darkness? Was it Jim reborn into this nightmare, or a new horror altogether? In the depths of the hush, she felt the shadows draw near, mirroring her terror. Would they find safety in this cold embrace of the woods, or would the forest claim them all? The rustling intensified, a wave of sound creeping closer, swelling ominously. Sarah held her breath, fingers entwined with Lily's like a lifeline. She could feel her daughter trembling beside her, a miniature echo of her own fear. "Please, just stay quiet," she whispered, glancing toward the long shadows that pooled and danced outside their refuge. The darkness stretched ominously, whispering secrets that clawed at her mind. The rustling culminated in a sharp snap of a branch, and her heart leaped to her throat. It was like a trigger, a command for the darkness to unleash its horror. Then it emerged, a grotesque figure wobbling forth from the shadows. Jim's twisted form moved as if it were bound by an unseen force. His skin looked almost translucent, slick with some unholy sheen. His eyes, black cavernous voids, glinted as they locked onto Sarah, burning with an otherworldly hunger. "Mommy," Lily whispered, her small voice barely audible yet coated in dread. Sarah pressed her fingers over her daughter's lips, trying to muffle the sound. Would it smell her fear? Would it know they were there? Jim's mouth opened wide, contorting as if trying to speak. No words escaped, only a guttural noise, a chilling invitation that wrapped around them like fog. "Let me in." The sound slithered through the air, persuasive yet hollow, as if the forest itself echoed back in unison. Sarah felt her strength waver, her resolve fraying against the sinister allure. "Mommy, I want to go home," Max whimpered, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. The innocence of his plea pierced her heart, igniting a fire within her that desperation could not extinguish. "Not yet, Max. We can't move. Not until it gets further." But the forest was shifting again, roots twisting from the dirt like snakes unleashed. She clutched her children tighter, as if her body could shield them from the encroaching nightmare. A sinister laughter bubbled up, taunting her, feeding her anxiety. Suddenly, a gust of frigid wind swept through the thicket, scattering dry leaves into a frenzy. The trees creaked, their branches swaying as if in a dance of malevolence. Shadows flickered like dancers on a stage, morphing into forms she couldn't fathom. What if it wasn't just Jim? What if the forest itself held secrets more terrifying than the familiar face she once knew? Let it go, Sarah, another echo murmured from beyond the darkness, pushing against her sanity. Was it her imagination or another trick? Join us, no. She rasped, forcing herself to breathe past the swirling panic. But something inside tugged at her, a call as magnetic as a siren's song. Mommy? Lily's voice trembled again, soaked in curiosity and fear. Sarah glanced at her, and for a fleeting moment, she caught a glimmer of something not entirely human flicker in her daughter's eyes. A shiver ran down her spine, a realization blooming that maybe, just maybe, they weren't alone. A cry splintered the silence, a primal strum of sound that shattered the air. Max's hand slipped from hers, reaching for the darkness. Time compressed as her heart raced and desperation turned to panic. Max! No! She lunged forward just as he stepped out, drawn to the hypnotic chant curling around them. Everything froze. Max stood in the open, illuminated by moonlight, oblivious to the life-and-death tension that coursed through the forest. As shadows began to coalesce around him, a low rumble echoed, rising like a tide ready to crash over them all. Sarah reached for her son, fear tearing through her. What would happen if he crossed that threshold? Would they ever escape? Don't, she screamed, but the words felt like birds escaping her grasp, lost to the wind. Max turned towards her, eyes glazing. It was like looking into the abyss. Whether it was Jim, the shadows, or something far worse, Sarah knew she had to act. What would she sacrifice to pull her son back? What price would the forest demand if she failed? The ground quaked beneath her feet as the shadows lunged, and like that, the choice pressed down on her. In the dance of fear, would she stand to fight or surrender to the darkness? Would she let the forest decide their fate, or would she take back control before it was too late? With her breath caught and adrenaline burning in her veins, she dove forward. Sarah lunged, heart pounding as she reached for Max, her fingers brushing his back just as the shadows twisted towards him like the arms of a hungry beast. Time snapped back into motion, tearing her senses asunder. The forest erupted in chaotic whispers, a chorus of ancient voices clamoring for her son. Max! She shouted, her voice a desperate plea that echoed through the trees. The shadows hesitated, momentarily still, swaying like reeds in the wind. She felt a sudden, unholy hunger in the air, a surge of darkness that clawed at her throat. Suddenly, Jim lunged forward, his grotesque form impossibly swift, each step breaking the silence like thunder. You must join us, he gasped, his voice a wet rasp as it mingled with the sounds of the night. The forest shifted again, branches reaching for them like skeletal fingers. No! Sarah roared, her fear morphing into raw instinct. She wrenched Max back with her, pulling him from the brink of oblivion. Her grip was fierce, teeth clenched against the brutal reality that their lives hung by a thread thicker than any rope she'd ever known. Mommy! Max cried, confusion and terror grappling in his voice, tears spilling over. The shadows faltered, as if her defiance threw them off the scent. Stay close! She commanded, tightening her arm around her son as she backed toward the safety of the dense underbrush. The darkness writhed, the figures within it warping in dismay, but it was still hungry, still pulsating with a malevolent energy. Then, unexpectedly, a burst of white light shot through the canopy, illuminating the chaos. Sarah squinted against the brightness, heart racing. It was unnatural. The light seemed to reshape the very shadows, bending them away as if repelling the dark. Run! She yelled, lost in the moment of revelation, the light becoming their salvation. The moment was fleeting, but it gave her the resolve she needed. She turned, gripping Lily with her other hand, urging both her children onward. They dashed through the trees, veins on fire with adrenaline. The sound of rustling branches chased them, each echo twisting like a knife through her courage. Behind them, Jim's voice slithered through the night, smooth and enticing. "Come back. It's better with us." The temptation wrapped around her mind, wrapping tighter than the bramble brushing against her skin. "Don't listen. Keep moving." She could feel the shadows chasing, the life in the suffocating dark stitching itself closer, pliant and ready to ensnare them. Each step felt like a race against time. The forest stretched endlessly, an infinite maze designed to trap them within its obsidian grip. Just when Sarah thought escape was impossible, they stumbled into a clearing open air that tasted of hope, but the light was beginning to fade, and the shadows slithered forward once more, pulling deeper into the heart of darkness that thrummed with sinister anticipation. "Mommy?" Lily whimpered, her small voice drowning in the murmur of the encroaching night. "I'm here, sweetheart. Just hold on." Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand, keeping her close, fear melding into determination. As they reached the clearing's edge, Sarah spotted something glinting in the moonlight, an old, rusted car hidden among the underbrush. "We can hide there," she shouted, darting toward it. But as she approached, the hair on her arms stood on end. Each ripple in the earth resonated with darkness. It was then she realized this wasn't just a car. It was a relic, painted with twisted symbols and smeared with what looked like ancient blood. A chilling realization struck. This was where others had vanished, where the forest claimed its offerings, and now it beckoned for her family. "Get in. Quick," she urged, throwing open the car door, praying for safety. Max and Lily scrambled inside as she glanced back, breath hitching. The shadows surged forward, a churning mass of terror that threatened to engulf everything. "Mommy!" Max cried, terrified eyes locked on her face. Crawling into the decrepit vehicle, they shoved against the far side, huddled in the back seat. As Sarah squeezed in next, she turned to slam the door shut. A deep rumbling laughter echoed from outside, blending with Max's whimpering. With one last glance into the darkness, Sarah felt a bone-chilling dread freeze her blood. Jim's face loomed closer, merging with the shadows, grinning with an unsettling familiarity that sent panic spiraling. "Let me in," he crooned, his voice an echo that pierced through her resolve. "No!" she screamed as she yanked the door shut and locked it tight. But the forest didn't care about doors. "Hold on tight," she breathed, as the car lurched, rattling violently under some unseen force. Could darkness break through? Would they survive this nightmarish grip, or would it pull them into its hungry depths? The engines of invocation twisted louder, drowning her scream as shadows began to swirl around the vehicle. The car shuddered violently, a cacophony of grinding metal and torturous, moaning whispers encasing them in a ball of fear. Sarah pressed against the back seat, her heart racing, feeling the sharp edges of the rusted frame digging into her skin. She was lost in a tempest of thoughts, each one darker than the last. Outside, the shadows converged, a swirling mass of dread dancing dangerously close to them. She could see Jim's face, his twisted features illuminated momentarily in the gloom, a grotesque grin stretching ear to ear. "Join us," he hissed through the thick night, his voice crawling under her skin like 1,000 insects. "Mommy! What's happening?" Max's eyes were wide, glistening with tears as he gripped Lily's hand tightly. Her heart sank at the sound of his voice, so young, so innocent. "They shouldn't be here. This couldn't be their reality. It's going to be okay, honey. Just stay quiet," she whispered, forcing strength into her voice. The shadows wrapped their tendrils around the car, seeking cracks, wanting entry. Sarah cast frantic glances at the windows, each flickering shadow a reminder of the danger pressing in. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed against the roof of the car, sending an electric shock coursing through her. The children yelped, huddling closer to one another. A piercing laugh sliced through the air, different from Jim's, a reflection of malice that echoed off the treetops. "Give yourselves to the night." The voice thundered, a cold wind rushing past, sending every lingering doubt crashing against her resolve. "Mommy! Please!" Max cried. The urgency in his tone broke something within her. She had to fight not just for herself, but for them. For her children. "We need to get out of here," she blurted, her instincts taking over. They couldn't stay trapped, it was a death sentence. Fumbling with her phone, she held it up, its weak light flickering wildly like a beacon in the dark. The shadows recoiled at the brightness, giving her a moment's reprieve. "Listen to me. We're going to push through." She steadied her breath, fighting the panic that threatened to engulf her. "Mommy, I'm scared." Lily's voice trembled, piercing through the chaos. "I know, sweetheart. But we can do this together." They had to believe it. They had to delve into the unbearable unknown. Sarah kicked at the back door, desperation guiding her. It creaked under her onslaught, and in that instant, the shadows pressed tightly against the metal, seeming to inhale, readying themselves for a feast. "On 3. She yelled, adrenaline surging as she felt power electrify her muscles. 1, 2. There was no hesitation. She swung open the door with a primal scream of determination. The night lashed at them like an angry beast, and she pushed the children forward, into the abyss. They jumped out, the forest swallowing them whole as chaos flared through the air. "Run!" Sarah's voice was raw, every ounce of strength became a lifeline. They dashed into the depths of the forest, branches clawing at their bodies. The laughter echoed behind them, a haunting melody cresting through the shadows, rolling with an intensity that promised no escape. But she could hear something else too. A soft, rhythmic thud. "What is that?" Max panted, stumbling slightly as fear looped around them like a vice. "I don't know. Just keep moving." But as they plunged deeper, the sound grew clearer, thumping like a heartbeat, resonating beneath the stillness, echoing what felt like the pulse of the very trees around them. With every step, tension electrified the air. Were they running toward salvation or straight into the jaws of the monstrous unknown? Suddenly, they burst into another clearing, an eerie stillness washing over them like ice. The thumping stopped. There, in the middle, an ancient stone altar stood, draped in vines and stained with age. Symbols wound around it, whispering secrets of sacrifice. Max and Lily gasped in unison, eyes wide with terror. "Mommy?" Lily whimpered softly. As Sarah approached, the ground trembled beneath her feet, and the breath left her lungs. Written in the stones were faces twisted, tortured visages frozen in eternal agony. Panic surged within her. This was a place of horrors. But then, out of the corner of her eye, she caught a flicker of light, almost imperceptible, glowing with promise yet entwined with danger. "Look!" She beckoned urgently, shifting her grip on the kids as they stared at the altar in fear and awe. With the shadows closing in again, she had a choice to make. Was that light a chance or a trap? "What do we do?" Max asked, terror seeping into every word. A question burned in Sarah's mind. Could anything save them? Or was this the end of their flight into darkness? The shimmer drew her in, hopeful yet foreboding, as the shadows whispered close behind. In the moment of decision, her heart raced, and then she felt it, something reaching out, embracing them with a chilling invitation. "Sarah," a voice crooned from the edge of the darkness, chilling her to the bone. What awaited them in the light? And who was calling her name? The urgency threatened to drown her as she plunged towards the unknown. The moment Sarah stepped forward, a shiver coursed through her, as if the air itself was alive with sinister intent. The light flickered, illuminating the altar with an otherworldly glow, bathing the grotesque faces in a different hue, alive, vibrant, as though their terror pulsated alongside the unseen force that beckoned her closer. "Mommy, don't." Max's panicked voice broke through her trance. But the warmth of the light drew her like a moth, its soft whispers soothing the anxiety clawing at her from within. "It's okay, Max. Just hold on to Lily," she forced the words out, though doubt gnawed on her insides. Was it truly safe? Or was this another layer of a trap carefully laid for them? The shadows loomed behind them, wisps of darkness slithering forward, alive with anticipation. "What does it want with us?" Lily asked, her voice trembling as she clutched her brother's hand tighter. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, feeling the weight of their innocence like a chain dragging her into despair. "But we need to figure it out." With a shaky breath, she stepped closer to the altar. The symbols carved into the stone seemed to pulse with energy, throbbing like a heartbeat synchronized with her own. The air shimmered around her, and for a moment, she could almost hear the lost cries of those depicted in the engravings, wails that filled the quiet forest and coiled around her throat, suffocating her resolve. "There's something about this place," Sarah murmured, peering closer. The faces, contorted in anguish, seemed to shift and twist, as if wanting to break free from their eternal prison. Then, the voice, a low, haunting whisper that twined around her thoughts like a vine. "Sarah, you have come to offer a choice," it hissed, threading dark melodies into her consciousness. It felt familiar and terrifying all at once. "What choice?" she choked out, feeling the ground tremble beneath her. The shadows quivered, eager. To join the shadows or to save the lost. The voice rolled over her, dark and inviting. "Sacrifice or salvation?" "What are you talking about?" Sarah's voice cracked with fear, terror blooming in her chest. "I don't want to choose anything." But deep down, she understood. The altar wasn't just a resting place for the damned, it was a gateway. The three of them stood at a precipice, a decision hovering just out of reach. The warmth beckoned, promising safety, while the shadows pressed ruthlessly closer, hungry for what they desired. "Mommy!" Lily's cry cut through her racing thoughts. Sarah turned, heart dropping as she saw her daughter's eyes glaze over, a light beginning to shimmer in their depths, a light drawn to the altar, to the chilling promise of safety and power. "No! Lily! Come back!" Sarah lunged, panic igniting every nerve as she reached for her. But was her voice enough to break the spell? The shadows writhed, almost tangible now, ready to shatter the fragile moment. "Join us, little one," the voice seduced her daughter, weaving through the air like a sweet song. "Fight it. Please." Max screamed, his own eyes wide with fear. But it was getting darker, the shadows inching closer, whispering secrets she couldn't hear yet felt. Sarah felt the grip of desperation tightening like a noose. "You can't have them." She screamed into the void, challenging the shadows, hating the dark that encroached upon them. The altar shuddered, then, a sudden shift. The light pulsed violently, and the faces on the stone seemed to scream, refusing to be silenced any longer. A blinding flash erupted from the altar, flooding the clearing with brilliance, turning night into day. She grabbed the children, shields against the onslaught of shadows, pulling them tight to her chest as the light throbbed. Chaos erupted, and she felt Max's small body trembling against her, their hearts beating as one in the midst of turmoil. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. Silence enveloped them, a thick haze replacing the noise of the forest. For a brief moment, it almost felt safe. But danger lingered just beneath the surface. "Mommy," Max whispered, voice trembling as he looked to the sides where shadows still threatened to unleash their chaos. Lily whispered next, what was the choice? That question hung in the air heavily, dripping with dread. Sarah looked around, her breath hitching. The path back seemed shrouded in treachery, and the light behind them could very well be a curse. What if we don't know it yet? She thought, dread curling in her stomach. They had to act swiftly, but a decision loomed, darker than ever. The shadows stirred again, gathering, enraged. As Sarah searched for a way out, the light flickered. Was it their salvation, or the start of a new horror? The remnants of the moment hung thick in the air, drawing them back toward the question they couldn't escape. Would they search for a way to unravel the horror? Or dig deeper into the darkness, risking the bond that held them together? At that very moment, the shadows howled ferociously around them, threatening to swallow their choice whole. In the blur of confusion, the voices whispered again, closer this time, resonating with a promise that could shatter everything they fought for. What would it take to overcome the ultimate choice? The darkness throbbed, waiting for their answer. The silence shattered as the shadows writhed, fueled by an insatiable hunger. Sarah felt the darkness clawing at her thoughts, threatening to suffocate the flicker of hope still lodged in her chest. "We need to leave. Now!" she yelled, urgency penetrating her voice as she yanked Max and Lily closer. The shimmering light from the altar flickered again, drawing Sarah's attention. It pulsed like a heartbeat, warm and inviting, contrasting sharply with the palpable chill pulling at her skin. "We can't stay here," she screamed, the dread pummeling her heart into a frenzied beat. "Mommy, what if we can save them?" Max cried, reaching toward the altar's glow. "No." Her voice was raw, panic lacing her tone. "That's not a choice. We have to escape." With every ounce of strength left, she began to back away, forcing her children with her. "Come on. Stick together." But with every step they took back, the shadows crept closer, as if sensing her retreat, lunging forth with renewed pulse. "Let go of that." The sinister whispers erupted like a chorus of lost souls, pulling at her head, whispering lies that twisted her reality. "You can't escape the dark." Lily's small hand slipped through Sarah's, and in that vulnerable moment, terror gripped Sarah's heart. "Lily!" she shrieked, turning back just in time to see her daughter's eyes glazed, entranced by the dark allure. "Fight it, baby. Fight it." But the shadows swirled around them, shifting shapes like serpents, curling into inconvenient reality. Max's face twisted in confusion, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Mommy, we have to help her." "No. We can't lose you too." Sarah squeezed Max's hand, pulling him back with fierce determination. "We have to make a choice, not here. Together." The light brightened suddenly, flooding the clearing with an intensity that felt tangible, almost alive. The grotesque figures on the altar shook as the light appeared to engage them, and for a heartbeat, Sarah saw their faces morph from anguish to longing as if they were begging for release but bound to darkness. "Mommy, I don't want to be afraid," Max shouted, his voice breaking as he clung to her with innocent desperation. Tears stung Sarah's eyes, swirling emotions told her the truth, fear could not be her guiding force. "We will not submit," she declared defiantly, turning her focus from the altar to the dark figures inching closer. "You will not have my children." Drawing on the love she felt, she thrust her hand out toward the light, pulling her children behind her in defiance towards the sinister threat. "Together. You hear me? Together." Just as the shadows roared, a surge of brightness exploded from her palm, and the forest cracked like thunder. The light engulfed the entire clearing, swallowing the darkness whole. She felt the foundation of her being quake and tremble, a tangible power radiating through her box of fear. "Hold on!" Sarah yelled, her voice melding with the energy surrounding them. Max and Lily pressed against her, their trust rekindling the flame of courage within. "Do it. Trust the light." In that second of combined strength, they leapt together into the radiance, a sonic blast bursting forth that cleaved the dark and shattered its grip on them like glass. Suddenly, they were pushed backward, flung away from the altar and into safety. Days of fear and trembling, hours of darkness, all distilled into that one heart-stopping moment. As the brightness faded, cascades of tender moonlight filled the space. The forest transformed, shedding its shadows, blossoms blooming among the trees like promises renewed. "What just happened?" Max gasped, staring wide-eyed at the clearing now drenched in warmth and light. "We broke free," Sarah finally whispered, the burden lifting from her chest. Lily blinked, the remnants of fear dissipating. Did we win? Sarah knelt before them, cupping their faces in her trembling hands. Her heart swelled near bursting. Yes, my loves. We fought together. We have each other, and that is everything. Though the evening sky above was still dark, the clutches of fear were finally broken. The echoes of darkness faded, replaced by a soft breeze rustling through the foliage, cradling them like a gentle embrace. Relief flooded her, and as they turned away from the altar, the looming shadows folded back into the world, forever sealed behind an unseen door. Hand in hand, Sarah and her children navigated back through the now benign forest. Each step felt lighter, uncoupling them from the night of horror. The only sounds now were soft whispers of the night creatures returning to their rhythm that was their normal, their peace. When they finally emerged from the woods, the first signs of dawn kissed the horizon as if the sun had valiantly pushed back the remnants of night. They had survived. "Look, Mommy!" Max shouted, voice filled with joy. He pointed at their home, alight and welcoming in the morning glow. Sarah smiled, her heart swelling anew. "It's beautiful." As they walked toward that familiar threshold, she felt renewed. She knew that darkness could creep into anyone's life, but together, they could carry the light and fight for each other. "Mommy," Lily said, a serene wonder in her tone. "Will he come back?" Sarah paused, considering the shadows that still haunted the edges of her mind. "Sometimes things linger," she said softly, "but we will be ready. As long as we stay together, we are stronger than the dark." They stepped back into their lives, into laughter, warmth, and the safety of ordinary moments. The battle had left marks, but every scar was a reminder of their strength, their determination, and the undeniable bond love, their greatest weapon against the shadows. As the sunlight flooded through the windows of their home, Sarah took in the simple beauty, her heart full. This was their victory. The story was not over, it had just begun. That if you made it this far, don't wait another second. You need to subscribe now. Smash that like button to show your support, and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Your thoughts profoundly matter here. And don't forget to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. This is your chance to help us grow this community. Thank you for being part of this journey.